morning everyone, it is Bridget here from Bridget's Healthy Kitchen, the home of healthy, delicious, wishing you a wonderful day. Wherever you are in the world, whatever it is you may be doing, I hope you are well and I hope you are safe. Thank you for joining me on today's episode here of Cooking in the Kitchen, something delicious and healthy of course. Today marks the first day of the week here in Sydney. It is Monday, so it also marks the beginning of our salute to the most wonderfully vibrant, delicious, exciting cuisine of India. So if you are joining me for the first time, welcome on board. Glad to have you here. If you are a long-time viewer, welcome back to my kitchen. I know you're going to love the recipes this week, especially if you're like myself and you absolutely adore Indian cuisine. So we're going to be doing some healthy versions of some really well-known popular Indian dishes this week. Today's class starts off with an absolute fantastic little recipe for onion bhaji. Now, I'm sure you guys know what onion bhaji is, and it is so wonderfully delicious, but it tends to be not so much on the healthy side. So I'm going to create for you guys today actually two onion bhaji recipes. The first one's a more traditional onion bhaji, so we will be using some chickpea flour, which is still really good. It's still a healthy flour because it's gluten-free, but it does have quite a bit of carbs in it. So I'm also after that going to be doing a version for you guys that is low carb. So we're going to start with a more traditional onion bhaji recipe, and then we're going to move on to a really low carb onion bhaji recipe as well for people who want to get those carbs out of their diet, because you know what happens with carbs is it does spike your insulin response, raise your blood glucose level, and we want to keep that as low as possible. So depending on which way you go, especially the first recipe, the first onion bhaji recipe with the chickpea flour, it is really good for people who don't have a lot of protein in their diet. So maybe you're a vegetarian, so this recipe might be one where you which you'll love, but I'm going to give you both anyway because why not, right? So let's get into the recipes. They are pretty simple to do, but like I said, we've got two to get through, so a little bit of work to manage. Just to let you know as well, I am still not able to see your beautiful comments coming up, but Mahay is online moderating from afar, so he is there answering any questions where I don't see. So come on down to my bench. Let's get into it. The first one I said we're going to do is that more traditional style of onion bhaji. So I'm going to be doing enough of the recipe to create 6 onion bhaji. Of course, you can always double the recipe if you like. If you would like to make more, you just double it, completely up to you. So to make 6, we're going to start with 1 onion. And I'm using red onion, but you can use just normal, brown onion, completely up to you. What you want to do, of course, peel it. And then I'm going to chop it nice and thinly. So just cut it through the middle there, so I've got a nice stable work surface. And then just as thinly as you can, slice your onion through. Take your time. If you're not used to, slicing, you don't have to speed this part up because you don't want really big chunks of onion. You want it to be as consistent as possible, which is what we're going for here. So take your time, don't rush it, and get nice and thin onions. Now I'm not crying today with the onions because I pre-peeled them about 2 hours ago. So this is the sort of thickness you're after, something along those lines, not too thin. So not too thin and not too thick. So once you've cut your onions, just throw them into a bowl. And then we're going to be adding the things to bring it all together. Because an onion bhaji traditionally is deep fried. Obviously, we're going to avoid doing that because that's definitely not the healthy way to go. But it becomes in kind of a nice little ball of onions and spices and stuff. So we need to make sure that we can get these into a bit of a ball. So the best way to do that is firstly we're going to add that chickpea flour, also known as besan flour, also known as gram flour as well. And we don't need a lot, which is good. Don't need that much. I'm going to put it onto my scales and we're going to add 50 grams, which is about 1.7 ounces of our chickpea flour or our besan flour. Of course, gluten-free it is a good source of protein. And it also does have some fibre in it. But once again, it's a pulse, which means that, you know, you're going to have that carbohydrate surge from it being a pulse. So chickpea, oh, don't do that. Get chickpea flour everywhere. All right, now that that's done, we're also going to add into here a bit of baking powder. I've got a teaspoon somewhere. A bit of baking powder. So a teaspoon of baking powder goes in as well. And now we're going to think about the spices that go into it, because of course, what do we absolutely adore about Indian food? It is all those incredible spices that they have come to use in their cooking that really just does set it apart. So the first spice that I'm gonna use is actually whole spices. So I have some cumin seeds, which I adore, and I also have some fennel seeds. But rather than just sticking them in just like that, the best way to get really, really good flavour and intensity out of them, would you believe, is to dry fry them. So I've just got my little frying pan here, and I'm going to do a teaspoon of each of our fennel. Oh, I love fennel seeds, and they're really good. Fennel seeds are actually really, really good to aid in digestion as well. So fennel and cumin, teaspoon of each goes in there, and it's literally a dry frying pan. There's nothing else in here. It is just a frying pan. And then I'm going to put it over here on the heat, and let it toast gently. It does not take long. And the way that you can tell when your spices have just heated through in that dry frying pan is they're either going to pop, depending on what sort of spices they are, or you're really going to begin to smell the most fragrant, delicious spice. So that's kind of two ways that you can work it out. But I'm just going to keep a nose on it, so to speak. Because I have got it on high, give it a bit of a twist. You definitely don't want to overcook them, because then they go bitter. So just stirring those things through. Let's add some more spices to our onion bhaji. And the other spices that I have here, this is a garam masala, which is a spice blend. You can some people make their own, whereas you can actually purchase a garam masala already pre-mixed. And it's just got a wonderful selection of spices in there. 1 teaspoon of the garam masala goes in. To give it that wonderful flavour and colour and look, we're going to go for some turmeric powder as well. So the wonderful golden turmeric, we're going to put in a teaspoon of turmeric powder is going to go in there. I'm keeping an eye, as you know. I'm keeping a watchful eye on what's happening behind me. I can hear it starting to pop. Just starting to pop. And as it's starting to pop, I'm getting this wonderful fragrance coming off these spices now. It's pretty good. Oh, it's amazing. Just maybe another 10 to 15 seconds longer is all it's going to take. It doesn't take long at all. And while that's happening, let's keep on doing a little bit of a mix here. Getting that in. Of course, we're going to add a little bit of salt and pepper. It's going to go into our mix. A little bit of salt goes in, a little bit of pepper. And if you wanted to, oh, here goes the popping. If you wanted to, you could also add in chili powder at this point as well. Just be really mindful that chili powder can inflame the gut. So if you are looking at this from a gut health perspective and you're not used to having chili in your diet, I would suggest you might want to avoid it, only because it can inflame the gut and make the gut a pretty hostile environment, and we're trying to look after it. So we're stirring in those wonderfully fragrant spices now from the cumin and the fennel seeds. It is all smelling good. It still hasn't come together, so we still need to bring this all together. And the very last thing we're going to add into that is a whole egg. So just break your egg in to your mix, and then I'm going to take up some gloves, because having added turmeric powder, I don't particularly want to have yellow fingers today. It's up to you, but I would suggest gloves, and it just makes it heaps easier to actually get your hands in there without having to worry about whether you're getting yellow all over yourself. So give it a really good mix. That's why gloves and hands. And you can see already, you could create one really big one. It's come together so nicely, and the only thing we've added to really bring it all together is that one egg. How cool is this? All right, so we now have our mix made. There's a couple of ways that you can actually cook this. You can cook this in your oven. Your oven would be set on 180 degrees, or you can cook this in your air fryer. If you've got an air fryer, I suggest you do the air fryer version. It is so much cooler because it literally does act like it's been deep fried. And as you know, traditionally, onion bhajis are deep fried. So the best way to do this is to take up a little square of baking, of non-stick baking paper. Like this is going into the air fryer. By the way, the air fryer is set on 190. And then you take up a little ball of your mixture and just let it sit on your baking paper like that. That's just so it doesn't stick to the air fryer. If you're putting it into the oven, you can just lay a baking sheet with non-stick baking paper and then make your 6 little mounds of this gorgeous onion bhaji mixture. And once you've made all your mounds up, they then go into the air fryer, except 190 degrees, which is 390 Fahrenheit, or the oven 180 degrees, which is 350 degrees Fahrenheit. They then go into your air fryer or your oven to cook up. The air fryer will take about 10 to 12 minutes, so not long at all in the air fryer. And what you'll notice, I'll show you guys in a little bit, what you'll notice is just how wonderfully they cook up. In the oven, it's going to take you a little bit longer. You're looking at about 20 to 25 minutes in the oven. And they will still, brown up, but I do find, of having done them both ways, I do find that they crisp up really well. Hence why I've got my air fryer here. They crisp up really, really well in the air fryer. If you've got one, definitely choose that over the oven. So that's the first one. So that's your more, as I was saying, your more traditional onion bhaji recipe. I'll show you what they look like after we have gone through the last recipe that we're doing today, or the second recipe that we're doing today, and that is for our non-traditional onion bhaji, but this one has a very low carbohydrate content because instead of adding the chickpea flour, we're actually going to be adding in, ta-da, cauliflower. And what I've done with the cauliflower is I've actually riced it quite a chunky, oh wait, that's a bit too chunky, Bridge. It's not supposed to be that chunky, it's about that chunky. I'll just put those to the side, shall I? That was a bit of a fail. All right, so I've got cauliflower instead of the chickpea flour here. So once again, we start with our onion, and yes, this makes 6 onion bhajis. If you want to double it, you just 100% double the recipe. Same as in we're going to cut it nice and thinly. I like to cut it that way so it all holds together, as I find it's easier to mold the onion bhaji. Some people like to do them in sort of half circles, but then it's really hard to get them to stick together. So I find by keeping that root intact, you actually get a more moldable onion bhaji from your mix. So thinly slice your onions. They go into our bowl. And as I was saying, we have a chunky cauliflower rice. I'm using raw cauliflower, not frozen cauliflower in this one. There's another chunky bit. Didn't check that, did I? And you need, say, around about 125 grams, which is 4.2 ounces of our chunky, not that piece, that's so many chunky bits of that one, gosh. Our chunky, not too chunky, cauliflower rice goes in there. Okay, next thing we're going to think about doing is also adding just a little bit of flavour as well. Not that there's not enough flavour in there, but I like to add a little bit of almond flour into it. You don't have to add almond flour. You could add a seed flour if you would like to go nut-free, but I do find that it really brings it together quite nicely. And we're only putting in a tablespoon, a heaped tablespoon of your nut flour or your seed flour, then go in there. You could do sunflower seed flour, you could do sesame seed flour, you could do pumpkin seed flour, completely up to you, or you could even do walnut flour. Totally up to you. So that goes in. We're also going to increase the fibre content, because you know me, I like to do stuff like that. And the way that we're increasing the fibre content in this particular onion and cauliflower bhaji is we're going to be using psyllium husks. So I'm adding in 2 teaspoons or half a tablespoon of psyllium husk. That's also going to help to bind the onion bhaji as well, which is it acts like a binder, a bit of a glue. Plus, of course, increasing the dietary content of it, which is really important. So now that we've got those in there, just give them a little bit of a stir. We're going to be adding the same spices. So I've got those 1 teaspoon of cumin seeds dry fried, 1 teaspoon of fennel seeds dry fried. They're going to go in. Over to our turmeric again. And we're going to be adding in a teaspoon of turmeric powder and a teaspoon of our garam masala. So if you like I said, if you're wondering about garam masala, you can purchase it pre-mixed. But also when it comes to spices, and a really important point is always purchase enough spices to last you no more than a couple of months, because you want your spices to be fresh. So even though I've got quite a large container, I don't have much spices in that because I don't buy a lot at a time. I would prefer to buy small amounts so that they're nice and fresh when I'm using them. Just a bit better when it comes to flavour. All right, so we've got that in there. Let's not forget, we're going to add a little bit of salt. We're going to add a little bit of pepper as well. And of course you could add that chili component right now if you so want to, up to you. I won't even tell you how much chili to add because that is really personal to, you know, how your gut works and also how much chili you can handle. But in general, let's say a teaspoon to, you know, a couple of teaspoons or something like that. So give it a bit of a mix. Now with this one, because as you can see, it is quite a dry kind of a mixture, we're actually going to be adding in a couple of eggs here. So just break your eggs straight in. We're going to get into it with our fingers again. Break them straight in. And then so I saved my gloves. And then back to my gloves. Very careful. Right, back to my gloves. And get in there with your hands. Get involved with your food. It is such a cool thing to do. And getting, you know, this is a great one for kids. Put some gloves on them. Get them, you know, especially for kids who don't tend to eat onions. But because what happens when you cook an onion, as you guys know, is it becomes quite sweet. So this is a great one for kids as well. So once you've got your mix like this, same is we're going to make our little onion budgie ball. Take up those little bits of paper and they go onto your paper just like you did with the very first one. They go onto your paper if you're putting them in the air fryer. And the reason why I don't just stick a whole piece of paper into the air fryer is because the air fryer works by circulating air. And if you've got a really big piece of paper, non-stick paper over your rack, there's no ability for that air to, or there's very little ability for that air to circulate, and you'll get an uneven cook and it won't crisp up as nicely. So that's why doing it like this, so that you're going to have space in between for the air to come through and circulate and get underneath and on the sides and, you know, on top. That's why we do it. So for your air fryer, little squares like that. If you're putting it in your oven, just on a piece of baking paper on a baking sheet. And the oven for this one is set at 190 degrees. And you're going to cook your onion and cauliflower budgies for 25 to 30 minutes. They do take a bit longer. And then the first ones. And if you're doing it in your air fryer, 190 degrees, which is 390 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's going to go in there for between 18 to 20 minutes. So I want to now show you what the finished result is like. And it kind of feels like I'm having a bit of an onion budgie party because it is pretty awesome. So bear with me. I will cook those. Do not worry, I will cook those. Let me have a clean down. I want a clean space before I introduce you to my onion budgies because they are pretty spectacular and they deserve a nice clean bench. Alright, so the first one we made, as you remember, it was using the besan flour or chickpea flour. And what do they look like? Ready? Alright. This is the original one we made, the very first one, so the more of the traditional style onion budgie. And as you can see, the color on here is fantastic. Aren't they amazing? The smell that comes from your air fryer or your oven as they are cooking is absolutely beautiful. Remember I made 6, so here they are. I didn't even have a platter big enough. So that was our original onion budgie. Using the chickpea flour. So yes, an ideal one for someone who was a vegetarian because there's some protein in there in that flour. But if you really want to go for the low carb option, which was our second onion and cauliflower budgie, this is the result. Woohoo! Look at that. Did I not tell you how awesome the air fryer is? You would think that's been put in the deep fryer, wouldn't you? You would totally think that that has been put in the deep fryer. But no, these were cooked in the air fry, and yet you still get what looks like a lovely, crisp, golden deliciousness from those onion budgies. So how would you serve that? I would either serve that as part of a meal where I wanted some vegetable content, obviously. Traditionally, this is served as kind of as a starter or as an appetizer. So if you want to go down that route, what you could then do is serve it with a lovely cucumber yogurt or a raita, something along those lines that you dip obviously the budgie into, and that will be amazing. But you know, quite frankly, they're really good on their own. Let me tell you, they're really good on their own in snacks, because who wouldn't want to snack down on that? Now, can they be stored? Yes, they can. You can store them in the fridge, you know, for 3 to 4 days. When you are ready to eat them, either heat them up in the air fryer, just on a moderate setting, just to get that crispiness back, get the heat through it. Of course, you could microwave it if you wanted to, but they can also be frozen as well. So you can put them into little Ziploc bags, and they will keep in the freezer for 3 months. And when you're ready to eat them, just defrost them overnight. And then the best way to do them is that way as well. So they're really, really wonderful. I hope you enjoy this incredible, incredible recipe. I am loving these little onion budgies. I have to tell you, they are so, so good. I hope you enjoyed that. I will be sharing this as a PDF recipe for you guys tomorrow. If you would like the PDF, keep an eye out on Bridget's Kitchen, and I'll share it with you tomorrow. Alright guys, it's been great seeing you. I hope you enjoy your day wherever you are in the world. Whatever it is you may be doing, I hope you enjoy your day and get into these onion budgies. So there you go. Take care guys. Bye.